Well, good morning, iMedia Day 2. And I will say that having been to 7 years worth of iMedia, there is nothing harder than Day 2 of iMedia, because you have probably had 2 days worth of fun, you've had 2 days worth of sun, activities, and we certainly know that last night's theme of a pub crawl was pretty freaking killer. So it's always tough to actually be the person who comes on stage on Day 2. But to compensate for that, 2 things. One, I actually get the esteemed privilege, I think, of sharing out what 65 marketers who, by their own choice, came into beautiful San Diego, which I know is extremely tough to do, an extra day early, to talk about the challenge of solving loyalty at scale, solving loyalty in a very, very different fragmented world. So we're actually going to report out exactly what we learned from those 65 marketers who came in and spent a good solid 7.5 hours locked in a room on Sunday before we released them to enjoy all the football and all the fun and all the sun. But the second thing, I know yesterday's session was fantastic. The General Assembly, everything on stage I think was just absolutely killer, and that's no surprise, having been to I think 15 or 16 different iMedias. But what I will say is today's content's even better. So I actually get, I was telling Nick yesterday, I was like, I actually get to present like the better stuff. Not that it's a competition or anything. So with that, I want to kick off and share with you what those 65 marketers kind of tackled during what we call the marketers only meeting. Like I said, it's literally folks who decide to come in voluntarily, and we work through a lot of different content. And obviously it's tied into the theme of customers for life. And the first thing I kind of want to just kick it off by saying is, I don't think we got to a point where we said it's customers for life. It's more about relationships for life. And if you think about that in a broader context, relationships for life, it's more than just you and your agency, or you and your publisher and your media agency. I mean, these are people, in theory, that you probably want to have some type of relationship with long term. And in a perfect world, your customers actually would treat you in a way that they would treat yet another person they want to have a personal relationship with. And so we get this idea that it's more about relationships for life. And the first thing we asked our attendees, we said, if you had an extra $1, would you invest it in acquisition or retention? And so I'm just curious, show of hands, who thinks that it would have been retention? So about half, 2/3 of the room. Not bad. Because we said about 60% of the folks said we'd put it towards retention. Now, if you look back on just data for the last 10, 15, 20 years, right, everyone would tell you, no. Put all the money into retention, right, because it's so hard to acquire new people. We had a great amount of healthy debate on why it was that acquisition was so insanely important. And I think there's been a pivot. It used to be that you would have a relationship, you'd have a business that was built to last. Right? There's even a book called Built to Last. And there's actually a really powerful blog post that was written 2 days ago that talked about more so the idea of built to flip. If you will, our relationships have not become long-term. Our relationships with our customers, with our people, with even friends, family, they have completely changed into a flip mode. If you will, our relationships, when we think about them from a customer and loyalty perspective, look more like Kim Kardashian's wedding that lasts 72 days than they do things that last 50 or 60 years. And as we kind of probe deeper throughout the 6 or 7 hours that we spent together, one of the first themes that came up was this idea of the fickle heart. And it's actually a term I've used for probably the last 3 or 4 years. But if you will, it used to be you fell in love with the brand and their product. And you may have fallen actually in love with their product first and then their brand second, right? And you based your entire knowledge, your relationship with that company off of that product and off of that brand. And all of a sudden now we have things like comparison shopping. We have more transparency that's ever been there before. We have reviews. We've got word of mouth. And all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second. I don't need to attach myself to any one company or any one product. If you will, I am more fickle. And that actually bled into the second theme. The question was, well, why are we fickle potentially? Well, think about your own organization, whether you're on the sales side, whether you're on the client side, whether you're on a publisher side. We usually split things into 2 operational structures. The first is acquisition, right? We have a whole sales team. We have a new business team at ad agencies. We have a team that's working on trying to make sure we have better relationships with Target and Kroger and Walmart if you're in CPG, right? Our first thing is, gosh, we need to get people through that funnel. We usually have a second team that's all focused on retention. Keep them from running away. And probably the single best thing that I heard, I really wish I had remembered who said it at the iMedia Marketers Only meeting, because this person deserves a tremendous amount of credit. They said, well, what if you actually started thinking about a new paradigm shift, a new business model, where you actually treated the people who were coming in fresh, the acquisition people, the way you'd want to hold on to someone long term. If you blended those 2 functions, if you took acquisition and retention and you put those 2 things together, would you really have to pick a side in terms of where you'd put your dollar? And I think, it was a resounding yes for the 65 of us in the room who said, absolutely. Now, obviously, that takes time, right? That's a cultural change. It's a business change. You might even be staffed for it. But I think it really starts to set the tone for how I think a lot of our presenters today, whether it's the great folks from Samsung or Petco or the panel that we have, I think are going to start to address this challenge. The third thing, I said, well, what if you started to unify more, right? You know, if you think about loyalty and probably some of the biggest problems managers are having, it used to just be really structured data, right? I could buy a bunch of information off of Experian or a third-party data source. I could take my loyalty card data. I could take an email, your first name, last name, date of birth. Really, really simple stuff to do. And now we have all this unstructured data, right? We've got tweets, and we've got Facebook updates, and we've got product reviews. And if you're a CPG, you've got to aggregate all those product reviews across every retailer that you have. There's all this unstructured data. And that makes it tough to actually think about how to deliver on the concept of loyalty. And that's actually more the ones and zeros, the metallic approach, the computer-driven piece, right? Doesn't that still get us away from the concept of relationships for life, right? The ones and the zeros and all the algorithms that are out there that are merging structured, unstructured data still actually keep us further apart from the consumers that we actually want to connect with. And so that was a big theme that came out. And the last one was this idea of life stage focus, that when we think about loyalty, when we think about our product, we think about our product marketing, most of us think about it in the context of, well, what's the life stage someone's in, right? Oh, so they're a millennial. Oh, they're a tween. Oh, they're in college. They just got married. They just had kids. They're retired. There's a whole number of kind of things we kind of start to look at. If we focus, though, about building a relationship with someone for life, we think really thought about it as a relationship, not a transaction, not a product, not a new product introduction, not reach, not frequency, not penetration, not maximize and maintain. If we say we really want to have a relationship with someone throughout all these different stages, how would that change the way that you actually think about connecting with your customers at scale? And so with that, it's really freaking hard, right? I mean, like, if anything you guys have heard from talking to people yesterday, whether it was during some of your cocktail hour sessions or it was through the one-on-ones, no one has an answer for this. I mean, I'll tell you, if there was an answer for it, like, you'd have the silver bullet for the company, right? Like, you'd have like a multi-bazillion-dollar idea, and we'd all wouldn't even need to be here today. And it's extremely hard. And I think the sessions that we're going to have today, starting with Brian Wallace from Samsung, who leads their strategic marketing, and Mr. Neely over from Network Insights, who are actually going to talk to us a little bit about a topic I think is phenomenal. It's four-dimensional chess, if you will, and kind of tackling how marketing is at scale. I know they call it 3D chess. I think it's 4D when you actually look at the actual content. So I'd like to welcome Brian. I'd like to welcome Dan to the stage, and let's get this party started.